So I have the honor to be speaking to artist, musician, overseer, bishop, and so many more things in between, none other than Bishop John Francis. Thank you so much for taking the time out to speak to me today, sir.
Glad to be on the program with you.
It's lovely. It's lovely. I know you're a busy man, so I'm going to try and chop through this as quick as possible. So, we've entered into the month of September, and it's all about Gospel Heritage Month. And you've played such a huge part, in gospel music here in the UK.
Yeah.
I'm wondering. I know we're limited for time, but can you
Yeah.
take us back to where it all began? Where did you start singing?
Okay. Well, I grew up in my father's church, being surrounded by music, and basically, music is an integral part to church music. And then, basically, from a child, I was a singer. They used to put me on a chair because I was so small to sing at conventions, and then my brothers and family were all musicians, keyboard players, and because they were, and they grew up, and then they left church. I guess I was the next person to start playing the organ. And I was fascinated because our church had joined an organization called Firstborn Church of the Living God that was in America. And our minister of music was a guy named Douglas Miller. And he was like one of the greatest organists and songwriters I knew. And I was mentored by him, went to the States, kind of learned sort of choral singing. I was a part of a choir that got recorded, and I learned from him how to the choir. And then I came to England and started the inspirational choir. And the inspirational choir back then was like one of the premier choirs that um, was going. And then I could go on after doing that also. I kind of put together an event called a Week of Gospel Singing. In those days, you couldn't use the word concerts. The church wasn't very embracing to the word concerts. You had to find words like singspirations and different names because they thought the word concert was secular. Gospel music is so different back then, how it is then, how it is now rather. I remember we done "Do Not Pass Me By," sort of the which is Douglas Miller arrangement, who MC Hammer also did back in the day. So we did "Do Not Pass Me By," and I remember actually doing it with the choir and doing it in church, and be brought to the altar for prayer because they felt it was not appropriate. So kind of give you a little insight how that was right now. I tried to tell people it's completely different today, how it was back then.
And so was that around the time? Because I knew I was going to be speaking to you, and I know you, like growing up, I know you to be the pastor, to be preaching and anything, and I know the work you did with LCGC, but I didn't know
Yes.
about. I spoke to someone. They said speak to him about Glastonbury. I'm like, Bishop John Francis, Glastonbury, and then they spoke about the group Madness. I'm like, how does this all come together?
Okay, so let me just go back again so you can understand our journey into sort of the industry, because we were just doing gospel music, and I was invited to take part. Well, we was it was what happened. Trevor Phillips had a program back in those days called Black on Black, and they asked for gospel groups. They wanted to do it. I think it was a Christmas show to bring in music for the show. So I sent a tape of my choir, and we got accepted, and we were invited. And I think that day was Church of God in Christ was singing, we were singing, and another group from Leeds. And after that, the group Madness heard us on Black and asked for us to sing on their album. Now, I turned around and said no. And funny enough, my dad, who's the minister, the bishop, turned around and said, wait a minute, this could be God. I thought, you're losing it. How could he say this could be God? Because, and he goes, well, find out what the song's about. And we asked about the song and asked about the lyrics, and it was okay. And next thing we knew, we sang Wings of a Dove with Madness. It got into #2 in the national charts.
Wow.
And after that, we thought, oh, let's just approach the same record company for a record deal. And yeah, we got a record deal with them, and we put out a single called Pick Me Up. And this was just the beginning of this whole gospel thing, because, since I would say the days of Oh Happy Day with Edwin Hawkins. Nothing like that had ever happened. And the record company really got behind us and what have you. And we were doing a lot of secular stuff and, stuff that was not church, because they didn't know how to promote us. So they were bringing us on platforms that, people could hear us. We left from there and we signed to CBS Records, which is now Sony Records. And that was a big deal. We had a big record deal now. That's what changed our life. We were singing with people like Alison Moyet. We were singing with Wham. We were, because it was all on the same label. And so I think because of that kind of status, we were also doing festivals. And yeah, we were the first, I think, in Britain to do Glastonbury Festival. And what happened was we were invited to, we had a great management, and we used to say she could sell fridges to the Eskimos. So she sold the idea to Glastonbury. They weren't too sure. So they put us in this little part of the festival on a small stage. And apparently what happened was we sang and we stole all the audience from the big top and everywhere. And it was a mess for the organizers. And they were like, oh my gosh, what happened here? Everybody was going crazy over our side. And, the next year they said, you know what, we ain't gonna make that mistake again. They put us on the big top. So we was on main stage the second year. And it was phenomenal. We saw people as far as our eyes could see. We were on the stage with every major name that could be. Yeah. So we did some interesting things, and also, as you know, went on to kind of start LCGC with Basil. He'll tell you the idea was kind of my idea, because we was doing a gospel thing for the week. And I said, Basil, why don't we get together and put a choir together? And the main core of it was Inspirational Choir, People's Christian Fellowship Choir, which is David Daniels, who I went to school with. And
Oh,
so that's how
wow.
he got involved. And the latter Rain Outpouring Revival Choir, which was Basil's church choir at that time. And that was the sort of the birthing of that community choir thing. But then because we got signed to CBS Records, I had to concentrate just on my choir because I couldn't do the two anymore.
Oh my gosh. I feel like this needs to be like in a history book. There's so much. And I feel like you're still just on the skim.
It really is. Everyone's saying to me, when are you coming out with the story? And I'm going to try and get the story out. I'm trying to get a documentary. I'm trying to work on this because there's a whole lot I can say. Yeah.
Yeah, brilliant. Can I ask, what was it like? So working with Glastonbury and sharing the stage with so many secular artists at the time, and we're talking, what was this,
Yeah.
like mid 80s, maybe early 90s?
Yeah.
So how was that? The crowd obviously embraced you, which is why you ended up on the main stage. What was the response from the church in terms of you being on that kind of stage?
Not good. The church was very anti what we were doing. My dad, because he was a bishop, they were okay with that. What was difficult was I was still very connected to the Pentecostal churches, the churches that were kind of major names. And I remember going into church services and people knew I was there and they'd preach on me and say how, we're doing on the devil's stage with people and causing confusion. And, they were very vocal. Back in them days, Black churches were very vocal how they felt about you. And I was demonized. I was told, I'm a disgrace to the body of Christ. And I had letters sent to me with, I couldn't even open up my letters because people were criticizing and sending nasty letters. I had a letter with I remember one of them was a picture of a bird and a matchstick man, and they said John Francis on the wings of a dove, because that was the song with Madness. All kinds of stuff happened. It was just really, you got to understand, we was on major stages, Saturday Live. There was like major chat shows like the Noel, I forgot what it's called, Noel, Edmund show, I think it is one. There was major. We were not doing little things. We were right in the top of people's face, in the front of people's faces rather, and it was not accepted. It was not accepted at all. I tried to tell this generation, they're like, "What?" I goes, "They have it easy." Yeah, but we kept going. We kept going.
What was it that
Um,
made you keep going? Why did you, what was it that was really spurring you to keep going on?
because I realized they didn't understand. We were singing in places and we were an extension of the gospel, being in a place where nobody was. And I think they had in their mind we were compromising. But when we went into these festivals and on these stages, I mean, we were the first to do Oxford and Cambridge Ball. You know, that was a different thing altogether, because you're talking about the upper class people hearing gospel music in their ball. And I went there, I sang gospel. I prayed even in the middle of my set. I would even preach to them, and they didn't even know I was preaching. I put little music in the background and preach a little word and what have you, and they would just dance into it, but they didn't know I was releasing the word of God. So I didn't feel anyway. I felt like I was doing the work of the Lord, and I knew what I was doing. I was very focused. And when you're a pioneer, one of the things I've learned is what's not accepted now will be accepted later on, and you have to take all the criticism. And that's been my life. I've been criticized, talked about, all kinds of stuff, but that's the journey I've realized now, is when you're kind of further ahead of people and you're doing stuff, then it becomes normal later on.
I look forward to that documentary. I think it's going to be absolutely amazing. So let's fast forward to
Yeah,
2022. We've got
yeah,
this Gospel Heritage album coming out. So you are coming back to music after what, 30 years of being out
yeah.
of it?
Yeah.
How
So
does that feel?
um, today I was asking myself the question, have I done the right thing? I've got so much going on in my life that now I'm like, oh, I've added another thing, and I'm a bit worried. I'm not lying. I am a bit worried. But let me just give you the story. I was not planning to do this. I just came on. There was a young lady named her name is going right out of my head right now, and she works for Apple, and she
Charlena, yeah.
Shalina, that's it. She was asked basically to come on Apple to do a talk, and I think it moved from that and brought her up to the higher level of the executive level of Apple. And she was having this conversation with me about, we got to get gospel music. And I wasn't, I'll be honest with you, I don't even think I was in the right headspace.
Mm.
And so she was calling in meetings and what have you. And she said, look, I'd like to get this person. Do you know how to connect with them? I goes, yeah, I do this. So I was just more consultation. And so went to the meeting and thinking, yeah, good, it's going to happen. And then she said, yeah, and you're going to record. I goes, no. And she goes, yeah, you have to. I was like, oh no. And then everybody in the team was like, yes, you have to. And I was like, okay, all right. So that's how I got back into
No
this,
pressure.
you know, because, Rack City Church is a large church. I'm doing so many things at the moment with the church. But
Congratulations on the new building as well. How
you,
exciting is that?
that's a God thing. I mean, in the middle of just coming out of a pandemic, being able to, uh, as you know, I don't know if you know, we were able to sell our building that
Mhm.
we have in Brixton. We bought it for 300,000 back in the day, got it sold for 4.5 million, and able to buy that building cash. And so, yeah, it's been a great day, great
That's
season.
that's amazing, absolutely amazing. I'm really, really excited for that. So back to your track, because I really want us to get into your music side because I'm quite excited about what's going on. So the
Right.
track is called "Don't Deaf Can't Hold Me Down."
Yes. So those of the people, right. Uh, let's rewind back. Back in the days, I did a co-present. I was co-presenting People Get Ready with
Yes.
Fletcher, and so many people would know that. And at Easter time, there was a track that we did called "Deaf Can't Hold Me Down" back in those days, and it was very a popular one because it's got a little bump to it, and everybody loved it. And we used to sing it also with my choir, but I never, I think we recorded it on vinyl, and it was really weird. We recorded it on vinyl, but that was the time when everybody was moving away from vinyl and moving to CDs. and it was the wrong time to record that song because we printed a whole lot of vinyl and people were moving to CDs. And so we didn't sell all of the vinyls because most people were being pushed into the CD market.
Mm.
So I just thought to myself, let me record this again. And this time, the whole industry is completely different. And so that's where that song came from. Myself and Nikki Brown wrote the
Right.
song.
That's awesome. And do you know what? I was speaking with Isaiah this week, and I was saying to him, it's beautiful to see the range of artists that we've got coming on this album. So we've got, you know, the seasoned artists, the trailblazers. I call you guys like the godfathers of gospel here in the UK. And then we've got the more current and the next generation coming up. One of which is your daughter, Juanita Francis, is going to be on this as well. How does it feel to be on this project with her?
Yeah, it's strange. I mean, what was good though was when we was in the studio together. I was kind of, but I think Juanita is kind of living my life all over again. It's really scary because some of the things that she talks about, I'm like, oh yeah, that's normal. This is what happens. But it was great. It was really good. We was talking about it and was kind of laughing, and I was sharing some stuff. And then she was kind of excited to see how I operate because when she was doing her album, I was on the other side being the taskmaster, and kind of I'm because I've been doing this all my life. I'm not easy when it comes to doing recordings. I'm very critical. And so she's seen me that way. I mean, when she did her album, we were arguing and fighting. I was like, she's like, it's all right. I goes, no, it's not all right. You're gonna have to do it again. I don't like it. And she's like, da da da. And I was like, hey, wait, it's my money paid for this. So if you don't, it went that far. But at the end of the day, when the album came out, she loved me for it. I said, look, it was worth it. I know I gave you a hard time. I gave the producer a hard time. I guess when you've done this so long, you know what it should sound like, what it should look like. And yeah, so, but it was good. She saw me now in the studio under that pressure and trying to get things right. And she's the one who's been telling me, John, Dad, it's all right, it's all right. Because I've been saying, I wish I could have done this better. I wish I could. I'm never satisfied. And we literally did this whole album within 2 weeks. So, you know, I'm a person who would have loved a little bit more time on it. But, you know, it is what it is. It's not terrible, but I know I'm a bit fussy when it comes to stuff.
It's beautiful to see. And, you know, you mentioned that, you know, you see your daughter Juanita walking or living out the life that you've already lived. If you could go back and speak to your younger self, let's say 30 years ago, what advice would you give to yourself?
I would have told myself never stop doing gospel music when I started Ruach City Church. I think that was the biggest mistake, but I did that because England never embraced me as a preacher. They always saw me as an artist. It was America that embraced me as a preacher. And it's so funny because America is now just finding out that I sing, because America didn't really see that side of me, or they saw John Francis the preacher. I still do a lot of big conferences, and that's what they've known me for. Now, those, however, like your sort of the Winans and the commissions and the old school gospel singers know who I am because they used to come on People Get Ready. But in terms of the general audience. So to answer your question, yeah, I would tell my younger self uh, not to, and it's funny, I had this conversation with Volney because Volney is my family. And I said to him, you've just started a church, do not stop doing your choir. That was the biggest mistake I made.
Wow. Wow. Again, you see the benefits of being able to speak to someone who's lived it, who's got that experience, because you just wouldn't know. You'd almost think it makes sense to give up one because you can't focus on the two.
But you see, what's so good, music crosses every barrier. You know, it's when you get to preaching and teaching in church, it's all theological and it's all about what someone believes in. But when you start doing, when you're singing, somebody don't have to believe in it. They just like the music. They don't even have to understand the language. You know, we were singing in different countries and they couldn't understand what we were singing, but they loved the vibe and what have you. So music crosses denominational barriers. It crosses language barriers. So that was the biggest mistake. I did that because I wanted to be accepted, and it didn't work anyway. I'm still not accepted.
I think you just got to accept that you're just different.
Exactly.
but
exactly.
perfectly how God expects you to be in this
Exactly.
season.
That's the most important. People, lives have been changed, and things now that is normal, in churches, is because we paved the way and we did what we had to do and take the hit for it, and now it's normal.
Mm. So, lastly, before I let you go, are we going to be expecting a lot more music from you in the future to go along with this documentary that we so want to see?
I just had the conversation with my daughter, and I said to her, I don't know if I can do this. Maybe just this is going to be the only one, because I've got so much going on in my life. Let me just say this: if I can get my life balanced in a certain way, then yes. But let's just enjoy this one track and see what happens.
Bishop John Francis, it's been an absolute pleasure speaking with you. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you very much. God bless.